What was kind of that journey?
There's quite a big story behind here, and I don't want anyone to listen to this story because it's not about the story, it's about the choices you make. Spent 11 years in a wheelchair. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't brush my hair, put on makeup. I couldn't feed myself. I continually had faith, and with that faith, I kept saying to God, okay, I know you're going to heal me out of this wheelchair as quickly as it came on. After 11 years, my neurologist said to me, you'll never walk again. I yelled and screamed at God saying, you said I had a purpose. What good can I be in this wheelchair? I said to God, wheelchair or walking, I will fulfill my purpose. And that was the choice that changed my life. I chose to live the best life regardless of my circumstances.
Today, get ready for a story of a miraculous healing, of powerful joy, and to see what really happens when you refuse to let your circumstances define you. So my friends, sit back, kick back, and let's get started, because this is the School of Influence. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm your host, Devin Schubert, also known as the Man in Orange, and I am so excited to bring to you this session of the School of Influence, because today's guest is someone whose story absolutely shook me to the core. Nikki is a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, and an international coach who went from 11 years in a wheelchair to walking in healing in her body, in her soul, and in her spirit. She's the founder of the Jump program and the voice behind the Joy Inspired podcast. She's empowering women all around the world to lead with joy, to lead with purpose, and to lead with a bold kingdom impact. She is such a powerhouse of hope. And today we get to learn from her complete fire that she is going to release to us today. So my friends, help me welcome Nikki Cruise to the stage. Hey, my friend.
Hey, Devin, and first of all, what a privilege to be here. Thank you so much, Mr. Man in Orange. And really a privilege to share my story on your stage, because the School of Influence is powerful and you're bringing forward transformation. So thank you for that. I appreciate it and value it so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it's always good to bring in people that understand the power of influence and what that looks like in different variations, different spots in your life. And, a lot of people look at people on social media like, oh, Nikki's a TEDx because she must be perfect. She's got the perfect life. She's had it all put together. Look at her standing on the red dot with TED behind her. Like, oh my goodness, it must be so great. Oh, she's got a best-selling book and she's got this coaching program. But what people don't realize a lot of times is that it took something to gain that influence, to grow that influence, to persevere, to get to where we're at, but also to continue to maintain that and to continue to grow. And so I'd love to just kind of start off with a little bit about your story of how did you get to TEDx stages and helping people the way that you do? What was kind of that journey? Well, pardon the interruption, but let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your story was meant to impact thousands or millions of lives, but you literally just didn't know where to start? Did you know that there's over 2.9 billion people watching social media every single day? That's literally the biggest stage in the entire world. And yet most people are completely invisible on it. Why? Because they don't know how to tell their story in a way that actually connects to other people. And that, my friends, is exactly why I created Stories to Stages. We help you craft your entire story, professionally edit your video, and then we publish it across all major platforms. Plus, I'm going to give you access to my entire storytelling bootcamp. This is over $25,000 worth of value, but right now you can get the entire thing for just $7. $7. Because this isn't just a course, this is a launching pad. we've helped people with no audience, no experience, finally share their story with confidence and to get real reach. Because your story told in the right way involves and moves people. So go to stories2stages.com and grab your $7 spot with the code of podcast1. Your story was not meant to stay silent. So let's get seen, let's get heard, let's get paid, and let's set people free. So go to stories2stages.com, grab your $7 spot, and use the code podcast1 and get yours today. Now, back to the show.
Wow, there's quite a big story behind here, and I don't want anyone to listen to this story and think, oh, she's got a big story, that's what did it. Because it's not about the story, it's about the choices you make. And as Devin mentioned, I spent 11 years in a wheelchair, not just in a wheelchair, but strapped in, because I shook so violently that I couldn't do anything. I couldn't brush my hair, put on makeup. I couldn't feed myself. And I continually had faith. And with that faith, I kept saying to God, okay, I know you're going to heal me out of this wheelchair as quickly as it came on. And as that began to grow from year to year to year, yes, there were moments of disillusionment, but most of all, there was the faith. There was keeping my eyes on God until, after 11 years, my neurologist said to me, you'll never walk again. It's been too long. And my world was crushed. In that moment, I absolutely went to pieces. I was so angry. I yelled and screamed at God saying, you said I had a purpose. What good can I be in this wheelchair? And I just was, I cannot begin to explain the frustration I felt. And many people have that kind of frustration and just give up, throw their hands in the air, give up on God, give up on themselves. They take on what they believe the world is saying about them. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, that only lasted a while, and I said to God, I am tired of being angry. I am choosing to be the person you have called me to be. And I realized that shifted my focus. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But I said to God, wheelchair or walking, I will fulfill my purpose. And that was the choice that changed my life. I chose to live the best life regardless of my circumstances.
What did that look like on the inside? Like, when I went through my near death and being told I had 3 months left to live, I was angry at God. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the world. And, it too came to a moment like yours to where I was like, oh, and a whole shift happened. But tell us a little bit about what was your mindset telling you, and help us to kind of get that emotional trap that you were in.
I was in that place of darkness, feeling worthless, feeling useless. And that place can eat you up. And you look around, you're just miserable. You have no value to yourself or anybody else. And you're just reaffirming that. But the moment I chose to lift my head and say to God, hang on a second, I'm no different from a second before that doctor declared that over me to when he said it. All that changed was my focus. All that shifted was my belief in what God said about me to what my neurologist said. And from being full of faith, believing I had a purpose, I suddenly felt useless and worthless. And I let the labels that the world put on someone in a wheelchair stick. I chose to let those labels stick. And it was in that moment when I realized it was my choice. It was like a light bulb went off. And I suddenly said to God, I'm really sorry. Can we work on rebuilding this? And I suddenly found that I could smile. Maybe I couldn't do anything else, but I could smile. And that smile, particularly in my circumstances, inspired other people. And it became contagious. And then I was grateful for my smile. And as I chose those different things, that anger started to dissipate. In fact, I realized how futile it was. And instead of focusing on all those negatives, I looked for opportunities to bring positive into my life. So that anger and that bitterness that eats away at you in those moments, you can sit and wallow in it, and it's like an acid bar. It eats away at you. It doesn't disappear altogether overnight, but if you choose to start standing up out of that, it falls away. And the new healing, soothing balm of joy, in my case, comes and begins to heal over those areas the acid was eating away.
Mm.
It takes discipline, it takes focus, and it takes joy.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. Do you remember there being like an aha moment, like when that kind of shifted for you? Was there a certain thing, or was it just a continual, like, I know I have to do this. I know I have to do this. I know I have to do this.
It started off with an instant moment where I was just so angry and I was yelling at God. I was having one of these screaming matches that I know we don't often admit to. And I was yelling at God, and suddenly I thought, in fact, I think I was saying, I'm not talking to you because you're not there, which is one of those sensible things we do. And I remember thinking, is this what I want in life? Do I really want to be living angry, bitter, and miserable? And I chose in that moment to shift over from that anger and to say, okay, God, let's do this differently.
Mm.
It's almost like saying to yourself, let's make the adult decision here. And it just looked so much better. Things couldn't feel any worse. And from there, yes, it was a gradual, but it was a big change in that instant and then gradual. And that still goes on today. I still have to make those choices today.
Wow. I love that. I love that. And I love what you said about, finding, not taking on those labels on the outside, but it's finding who you are on the inside. And I like to tell people, I argue with God all the time. Like, it's really okay. God can handle me yelling at him. If you need to swear at him, like, he can handle it. He's a big God. And I like to try and let him win. It works out better for both of us if he wins the argument. And just, I mean, there's probably a little bit of selfishness in there of what's good for me in that. But I love that it's about our identity, and our identity that we choose to be able to walk in, no matter what the world around us has told us. And when I went through my divorce, people had told me, you'll never be in ministry again, you'll never be a leader again. And I was just like, God, I didn't choose for my now ex-wife to have an affair on me. How is this going to come against me in the body, in the family? And the Lord told me that your identity doesn't come from the creation, it comes from the Creator. And we can stand firm in that. And so I love what you said about those labels. And so what I kind of heard you saying is a similar type of thing, is that, your identity isn't found in what you've lost around you. It's really found in how you believe what God says, what you believe God says about you.
Yeah. And your circumstances do not define you. And I'll take that one step further, Gavin. What God says about you doesn't define you either. What you believe about what God says about you is what defines you. Because God can say it and does say it. He tells us these incredible things about ourselves. That doesn't change us. It's when we have faith in them, when we choose to align with what God says and believe it and start taking action and doing it. That's what truly defines us, not our circumstances.
So I love that. I love that. So tell me a little bit more about like that taking the action. How do you take it from a belief, okay, I believe I'm going to do these things. I believe this is an identity God has given to me. This is who I know I'm supposed to be. But you still have those thoughts. You still have those things that come in, they sneak in, whether it be the enemy sneaking it into your mind or just, limiting mindsets that you may have, or maybe circumstances around you or people around you that are barking at you and saying things. Tell a little bit about what that action looks like.
I think before the action comes the faith.
Mm.
Because when you align with God, when you truly go in and say, okay, God, what is it you require of me? And what are my next steps? You can then stand in faith and know and trust that. And you can have joy in knowing that you partner with God who will make the way perfect. And as God does that, you can take that next step. So before the action comes the faith, but then don't do what I've done so many times and rush off. You make the plan. God's given you the vision, and now you make the plan to carry out the mission all on your own. Pull it with God. The taking the action comes from following God's steps. How do you see those steps? Divine opportunities happen, doors happen. But when you start having to actually really push through things, you're out of alignment somewhere. Yeah, it takes hard work. But God doesn't want us to strive and struggle. And yeah, the work is there. But we get to step in alignment with our calling, our purpose, and always taking God into those difficult places. Don't try and build alone. He's a far better builder than we are.
Isn't that right? Oh my goodness, that is so true. That is so true. I know there's so many different times in my life that I've tried to build, and this is one of the things that I taught early on that the Lord really showed me when it came to sin and about moving forward, moving backwards, and where you're at. And there's a couple of things. I believe that we're not protected by the Lord. I mean, we are in like a general sense, but we're not protected when we run ahead of Him. Like, we're asking for protection, but He's like, "No, son, no, daughter, you're ahead of me. My protection is back here." But I also believe that there's a lot of people who are not where God called them to be. They have backslidden. Maybe they're at a church, or maybe they're someplace where they're not operating, not necessarily just in the fullness, but they're not standing in the fullness of who they're called to be. And so they're backslidden from where God wants them to be. And the backslidden is actually sin. We are sliding behind God. And so we ask God, why am I not getting this? Why am I not protected? Why are all these things happening? Well, because I'm up here, you're back here. It's time to catch up. And there's grace and there's mercy for all those things. And I believe that a lot of the things in the spiritual realm and in our influence, it starts here. The spiritual realm, your mind's eye, your spirit's eye. And so tell us a little bit about that mental breakthrough of the shift that happened for you when you chose to stop being mad at God.
Well, God began to focus me on something totally different, on creating an impact by shining His light, by bringing Him glory, which I sure wasn't doing when I was mad. And suddenly life became fulfilled and became worthwhile. And God began to work in my heart, my spirit, and my emotions. There was so much healing that happened in that time. And I'm so grateful for everything I went through that brought about that healing. But yes, it did take that shift in focus. And I got to permanently choose, do I want to fight this in the natural, or do I want to fight this in the spiritual? And we so often turn around and go, oh, that's the enemy. when that's not the enemy, it's the consequences of our choices or our sin. Or we go, okay, this is just the way the world works. Well, we might be in the world, but we're not of the world, and we get to shift our mindset to a kingdom mindset to see things differently for that exact reason.
Mm.
And is it okay if I share the next part of my story?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So after 3 months of still sitting in this wheelchair, which obviously had its frustrations, strapped in and smiling genuinely, not just a smile plastered on my face, from the heart, smiling and just loving the healing God was bringing. The one day my husband parked me in front of the computer and I watched a church service from Open Door Church in Texas, watching online from California. And I went to God saying, I'm coming to you expectantly, hoping he was going to do some more of that heart healing. Service finished. I wheeled myself off to the bathroom, ran a bath, and I was lunged over the bath the only way I could reach the taps. And I reached back for my wheelchair, and it wasn't there. My first reaction was, oh, I didn't put the brakes on and it's rolled away. And I looked over my shoulder and I reached back, and it is so crystal clear in my mind how I turned around and the wheelchair wasn't there. I had walked to the bathroom without realizing it. And I walked back to the bedroom or the living room, which had my hospital bed in it. And when I thought I'd wheeled myself to the bathroom, I obviously hadn't, because there the wheelchair was, still in front of the computer where I was watching that church service. And I've been walking ever since. So after 11 years, after being told I would never walk again, man can say what they like, but God gets the final say. And I had to learn to write again. I had to learn to use a cell phone, use the computer, but I didn't have to learn to walk. And I truly believe God healed my spirit, my heart, and my emotions so that I wouldn't be a walking mess. And I say to other people, you may not be in a wheelchair, but what up here is holding you back? What limiting beliefs are you strapped into? How are you thinking about yourself? What is your wheelchair that you get to let God take your hand and help you out of?
Wow. That's so powerful, so powerful. And, for those watching, one thing that I love to tell people, because, similar to yours, and I'm sure you've gotten this, in my story where Jesus showed up in my room and miraculously healed me. You can not believe what we say. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you believe me or not. You can never take away my experience. You can never take away what God has done for me, with me, to me, because that's an experience between God and I. And I love the way that you share that. Just so you really just brought us into that image, like, being able to see you getting up and not even recognizing it. Something that had been so, would you say mundane? Something that you were just so used to every day of just sitting in there. And next thing you know is it wasn't there. What was kind of your emotional thoughts at that time of like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, I ran around, I scooped up my cat, who was terrified because with the shaking, I usually squeezed the cat or dropped her, and I scooped up my cat. This is after I went down the corridor and called my husband, who came out saying, what's wrong? And eventually he just turned around. I said to him, what do you think? After I'd been down into the garden with him following me, going, be careful, be careful. Any of you have that when you take a new step in your life, in your business, and people around you are being overprotective and going, oh no, this isn't right. Be careful, be careful. Well, my husband did the same thing in the reel, and I felt the grass beneath my feet as I walked in the grass, holding my cat, dancing around. And I came back inside. And I want you to think of this, how this happens when you have opportunities. I came back inside and I sat in every single chair there was to sit in because I could choose. And that freedom is something that I don't believe is just physical, it's spiritual as well. God has so many gifts there for you. Make sure you're sitting in the chairs and not on the table or the floor sit in the gifts God has given you because He does allow you to choose. And I said to my husband, and he looked at me and said, I have to fix the air conditioner. He was in total shock.
Wow. Wow. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And, even just this, the influence you had with your husband is like, whoa, what is going on here? That's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about what that, what that looked like as you continue. Did you ever have doubts of like, is this real? Is this really happening right now?
Not for 1 second.
Yeah.
I have had situations where I've thought, is it going away? There have been times where I've got a little shaky. And more recently, I've had some health challenges and I've thought, what's going on here? And I've had to stand in the fact, in blind faith. And what else is faith other than blind, And just say, God has healed me. And regardless of my circumstances, just the same as that wheelchair, I will continue to worship Him and I will continue to carry out my purpose, to be the influence in the world that He's called me to be, because that is a form of worship. When you carry out the influence that God has called you to carry out and you share your message, which might be in business, it might be in ministry. And I'm going to slip in here that Jesus said, I go about my Father's business. He didn't say I go about my Father's ministry. So your influence goes across the board. And how you choose to bring that forward is glorifying God. There's part of your purpose.
Wow. I wrote down what you said. It's so good. Influence is a form of worship. I absolutely love that. And I know that all things that we do are supposed to be in worship. But a lot of times we think of that as just me and God. It's me singing a song. It's maybe me singing in the shower. It's me praying. It's me doing these things. But the ways that other people see us, the ways that we radiate God's love, our influence, is an act of worship, is a form of worship. And I also love what you said. You were talking about how even now, you've had some health problems and, things come and go and all of that stuff. I think it's important that we recognize it just because you have a breakthrough moment and just because you have this influence or this stage presence or you're speaking or you have great social media following, it doesn't mean that it's always easy.
Yeah.
And so just because there's one moment of fame, maybe you go viral for something, you get hundreds of followers, who cares? If you can't maintain it, it's worthless. And that happens in our lives, that happens in our healings, that happens in our relationships. We have to be able to maintain it. And so I do believe that there are times to where the enemy, our bodies, people, things are going to come against us and try and rob, kill, steal, and destroy all those things. And sometimes the enemy likes to come against my family. likes to come against my kid, likes to come against what I'm called to do with my kids. And I just immediately know in that moment, is like, oh, heck no. This is an attack against my life, against my family. And I'm not going to allow him to do that. And I have to be in that mindset of not waiting for the enemy to do something, not looking for it, but just being conscious, because I'm always trying to put my next step forward to advance the kingdom of God, to advance my influence, to grow in my influence, because like you said, it's the alignment. We can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah. And, you've said so much in that, but we spend a lot of time going, not today, Satan. Why are we wasting our time addressing him? Why not shift and say, what today, God?
Come on.
Because God's influence is so much greater. And when we walk in our purpose, we're walking behind the Father. And if we're turning around and looking sideways, even to say, not today, Satan, where's our focus?
Mm.
And when we just focus on God, we are dressed in his armor, and we have a secret weapon. Can I tell you what my secret weapon is? I saw your sword in the back there. It's joy. It's joy. So that when we have those things that come against us, when we do struggle with worldly challenges or spiritual challenges, the joy of the Lord is our strength.
Mm.
Joy isn't what you get at the end of the battle. Joy is what sees you through the battle.
Mm.
Joy isn't what you have at the end of your business launch. Joy is what sustains you through all the challenges of completing your business launch. And where do we get that joy? From being in alignment, worshiping, and standing with God. And the knowing our purpose brings us joy. You mentioned something earlier that brought me to the thought of, there are so often times when we feel life is empty. We've got all the worldly success. It was when you talked about believing. When you are being successful and not having that joy, not feeling fulfilled, the question is, are you in alignment with your purpose? Are you having the influence God wants you to have? Because if you don't have the joy, something is out of whack.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, Nikki, there came a point to where I had two pretty uh, good to the world's eyes, six-figure businesses working on social media and helping people recreate their videos and all this kind of stuff. It was great, but I hated it. I hated it. I was behind this computer all the time, working on things and, editing videos. I worked with my coach, and, we had worked on this for 6 months and it was awesome, but I had no joy in it. And I said, look, I hate this. He's like, what are you talking about? You have the easiest residual income because you're paying a team. They're doing most of the work. And I said, but I don't get to talk to people. Like, I miss interacting with people. I miss the coaching. And he said, okay, so what do you want to do? And I said, I want to scrap it all. He's like, okay, well, let's find something to where you find the joy again. And it's exactly to what you're saying. It's exactly to what you're saying, is that when we move in these mundane things, when we move in these things that the world says is good or looks good, how many people out there have 6 or 7 figure businesses that some people on the other side, like, oh my gosh, a 6 or 7 figure business. But little do they know that it's a 6 or 7, maybe even 8 figure loss that they have. That's not 6 or 7 figures profit. That just means that they made that much money and then they sow it all back into their business because they have to pay for all the things. And so joy is not found in that financial and in that influence unless you have the alignment like you're talking about. The joy, the joy, the joy, the joy in it all. I love that.
And joy will make you money, or the lack of it will make you lose money. Think about how much, and a little thought popped into my head recently. When you're bringing God's message forward, whether it be verbally, the way you live, in selling your products, the way you connect with other people, you have that joy. And when you have that joy, you connect better. When you connect better, you make more sales. When you connect better, your team is more inspired. So when you're bringing God's message through in the way you live, it increases your bottom line. When you don't have that joy, how much time are you spending at the shrink or at the doctor's? Or how many days are you late and missing appointments? How many clients do you lose because you really don't care? So why don't you become a prophet for a profit?
So good. That's so good. I love it. I love it. I want to back up 1 second here before I can move forward to that prophet of the prophet. I love that. I love that. Can we discuss what's a definition of joy? Because I know a lot of people, you think of joy and they're like, oh, it's all happiness. But then the Bible says, consider it all joy when you go through suffering. Now that doesn't consciously make sense to me. So tell us what your definition of joy is as you're describing it.
Well, first of all, the acronym God gave me for joy is just own yours. That means it is your responsibility. It's your choice. But joy is seeing the promises of God through the arms and legs of the giants. When you focus on God's promises through the challenges you see, what's in focus? God's promises. And what goes out of focus? Doesn't mean the giants aren't there. Absolutely not. So joy is seeing and trusting what God has spoken over you, into you, through scripture, through prophecy, through that little urging in your stomach that you know is from God, that you get to believe in. And when you see those promises of God through the arms and legs of the giant, your focus is taking you in the right direction. Joy isn't happiness. Joy isn't that momentary. Even a narcissist can be happy. It's that feeling of elation when you've achieved something or having a good party night. But what about when you go home afterwards? It's not the smile on your face. It's not the momentary energy. It's the heart knowing that God has got your back and that there is hope. And that's why you can be in tears and grieving and still have joy. You can't with happiness. Joy is a permanent inside thing that is in you, and each of us have it. Everybody has joy.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. That's good. And so would you say that joy is like a decision? Like we choose joy? Is it kind of like the arm of God? Like we choose to put it on us. We choose to allow it to radiate out of us. We choose to let it rise up from within us.
Joy comes often from gratitude, and gratitude is something you choose. But joy, let's look at who created us. The Father. Let's look at his Son. Look how Jesus partied and loved and followed the promises of his Father. That's joy. So we were created in God's image. We have joy in us. It's a natural part of us. And we get to choose every day to tap into that. Now, yeah, I know life circumstances can sometimes beat that joy up a bit. So from being this beautiful automobile we get to drive in, it might have got dented up, been in a wreck, crashed up, and all the rest. But you know what? God doesn't take that crashed up automobile and send it all for spare parts like we so often do. God brings in every single spiritual gift in you that can undent that vehicle, that can reattach everything that makes it that perfect car, and even more beautiful than before, even stronger than before. So if you feel like your joy's been dented and beaten down and crushed up, time to take a deep breath. Look at the value you have and reinflate that joy until it's bursting out of you, blooming forth. So it's absolutely a choice. How was that for a long answer to a short question? Absolutely a choice that you get to make when you wake up in the morning. How do you want your day to go? Find one of the many scriptures on joy. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Because you may hit those challenges. Jesus, when he went to the cross in Hebrews, it says, he counted it all joy. Wow. Yes, he did. Because that's the definition of joy, that he was following God's will because there was a greater purpose. We can sustain everything that's thrown at us because the joy of the Lord is our strength. Not our joy, God's joy that's in us. Take a deep breath, breathe it in, believe it, and blow it out. And it's contagious, and it's magnetic, and it's exciting.
I love that. I love that. It is. It's so important that we do recognize that joy is contagious. We get to walk into a room and own that. We get to walk into a room and set the atmosphere no matter what's going on around us. And it's such a key thing. And I love that you said it's not our joy, it's the Lord's joy. It's God's joy in us. And that's so good. So you got out of the wheelchair and you started doing the things around you. Kind of tell us what some of the things that you've accomplished and been through since that time.
When I started off once I figured out how to actually turn the computer on and print, I learned that, and there's a whole story behind that for another day. I began realizing that what I did was encouraging people all the time. And although I said, I'm no coach, I'll never be a coach, it's not my lane, God looked at me and said, you don't get to decide what's your lane. I have equipped you, and I've given you so much of the character needed for a coach. Now you get to go and learn and educate yourself and equip yourself. You have the spiritual gifts from me, go and get the worldly gifts and equip yourself. So I did that, and I began coaching. Amongst other things, I am a God Talk certified coach, and I now coach female Christian entrepreneurs how to find that joy in their business, how to go from, instead of striving to thriving, to having the joy that creates that impact. But it's been a growth journey, and I've got my podcast. It's been a growth journey, and along the way, I've had mentors, I've had coaches who have equipped me to go on there. And I've had many coaches I've jumped in with and thought after a month, you know what, I'm not supposed to be here. It's not too late to correct your mistakes, folks. Doesn't matter how much money you put into it. If God says stop, stop. But God took me to the TEDx stage. God took me onto various stages, and that TEDx experience was amazing because my TEDx talk is not perfect. But guess what? It's perfectly me. Do you know, got a mistake in the middle of it on the recording? Where I go, hey, this isn't working. It's perfectly me, and I got to share my message. And that was thanks to an amazing lady by the name of Rolana Fernandez, who was the mastermind behind the first book that I wrote in, A Journal of 31 Days of Overcoming, Stories of People Overcoming, which is a journal. That is, I had been on a few stages before, but that is really where the journey began, because when you stand on that TEDx stage, You get the worldly confidence that you maybe didn't have before. But you know what? Every time I get on a stage now, I still have to believe in myself. I still have to make that choice.
Mm. Wow. I love that. I love that. Even through a mistake, even through all these things, we, it just reminds me of something the Lord told me recently, is that if we would not focus on the 30 seconds of a mistake throughout your 24 hours of your day, instead focus on the 23 hours, 59 minutes, 30 seconds, that there was everything that went so well. All those blessings are already laid there in front of us. And so I love that way that you kind of reframe that of like, hey, here's a mistake. Who cares? It doesn't define who I am. Instead, this was a defining moment as a whole for what I get to continue in. And it is you bring that joy, you bring that radiant, you bring that excitement to people. And I can already tell, just the ways that you're able to shift people's mindset um, by the way that you share. And it's not something that you are definitely doing, but it's something that you have lived yourself. And so you're releasing it to other people. And I feel like they're catching that. They're catching it. And as they catch that from you, that contagiousness, like you said, of that joy, you're in those moments transitioning their mindsets to I like to call it borrowing your belief. Because you know what, Nikki, there's times to where I have to borrow somebody else's belief. My son is struggling. My dad passed away. There's just so many things. I don't know how I'm gonna get through it. No, you can. I'm gonna be here along with you. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this together. And so I just see that in you of you like coming and partnering together with people. And I feel like that's something, for you in your coaching and in what you do is there's that alignment that not only you have with God, but as you step into the fullness of your calling and your identity and your joy, people are like clinging to you, like, give me some of that joy, give me some of that joy. I need some more. And it's like you're just overflowing of that joy and you have it in your journal, you have it in your podcast. And I love that about you.
Thank you so much. And it really is God. And that is, I don't always get it right, but that is always my goal, is to glorify God. And it is about God. But remember what I said, joy is contagious and joy is magnetic.
Mm.
If you want to increase your influence, seeing as we're on the school of influence here, tap into the joy inside you and bring joy to those around you. And one of the most incredible ways you can do that is by helping people transform. Even though you're not perfect, sorry, I don't know too many people who've been issued their wings and halos yet. You know, we aren't perfect. We're all on a journey forwards. But if you find the right person who you connect with, who makes you smile, who brings you joy, not just who cracks the whip. Whips go along with the joy. You know, if somebody's going to drive you hard, but still bring that transformation, that's where the joy comes in. And that's magnetic. And you get to do that for yourself and you get to be that for the world. That's shining your light. It doesn't always look pretty and easy and rosy. Just like when Jesus said, I count it all joy. That wasn't pretty, but his heart shone and look at the impact it had on the world. Don't you want to do the same? And you can do it by choosing joy. Take your one simple step. Recognize what makes you wonderful, because then you believe in yourself and that brings you joy. I get a little passionate on this bit.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So for those of you listening and those of you watching, if there's times, if there's moments, if there's things that you're struggling with, whether it be in the past, whether it be now, or whether it be in the future, the word says and the world says, we all know that we're going to go through stuff. Stuff is going to happen. But like Nikki was saying, you get to choose the joy. Step into it. Step into the fullness. Join as a part of a community to be able to help you when you are struggling. And so, Nikki, this has been such an amazing conversation. I've loved the flow of how we just got to be able to have conversation and dive deep into this. And so if people wanted to follow you and wanted to know more about the things that you're doing, how can they do that?
Well, the best way is to find me on Facebook as Nikki Cruise, also known as the Joy Junkie. The only thing that I overload on is alignment and Jesus, so don't worry about that. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And you can always follow the Joy Inspired podcast. And if you go and look in the last couple of weeks' episodes, there's a 30 Days of Joy scriptures downloadable down in the description. And you can print that out and put it on your fridge and have one scripture every day as you eat your meals, because nourishment to the soul is as important as nourishment to the body.
Love that. I love that. That's so good. That's so good. And so, yeah, we'll drop all those links in the description down below as well. So you can easily follow her and get some of that junkie of the joy all around her. Because she is, isn't he? I mean, she represented her brand of Joy Junkie very well today. And so thank you so much for joining me today and having this conversation. If there's one thing that you could leave with the listeners, with the viewers today, what would that one thing be?
I think the most powerful thing is to remember that your circumstances do not define you. You get to choose the joy of the Lord, to have the strength to overcome any challenges you're facing and shine as a light for Him and feel fulfilled.
Wow. Well, if you guys didn't feel this, if you didn't feel that in your spirit, I don't really know what else to tell you. Because what Nikki shared here, it was so much more than a story. It was so much more than just a testimony. She radiated the joy, what she has been given, what she walked through, and radiated it out to us. And so the two things that I feel like really echo in my heart of what we kind of just discussed today is that gratitude is like the doorway. We get to open up with gratitude, and that joy is our weapon. Joy is our weapon to continue fighting, to continue standing strong. And so, as we also talked about, you don't really need those perfect conditions to start making an impact. You don't need a perfect condition to have influence on other people. But what you need is a decision to believe again, a decision to show up, even if it's like a limp, because it was David that had a limp, right? He argued with God. Was it David? Somebody argued with God. Who had to fight with the angel? I'm usually pretty good at biblical characters, and he laid his head on a rock, and he came up with a who was it?
I don't think it was David. I think it was actually one of the E's. It's too early on a Monday morning.
I'm usually
But yeah, and and if I might take a second there, it wasn't his job to fight off the spiritual attack. He called on God to do it. It was God's job, and you can rely on God. Don't take on things that aren't yours to take on. Lay your head on that rock and dream sweet, calling on God's protection.
Yeah. No matter what your circumstances are, God can still use you to lead. God can still use you to love. God can still use you to influence others. And so today, I want you guys to think about, what is your wheelchair? What's the thing that you've been sitting in, whether it be mentally, emotionally, spiritual, that it's time for you to rise, that it's time for you to choose joy and move forward again. And it might not just be about walking again, because it can be metaphorical. It might be about what can you do to start worshiping again. It might not be about running ahead or staying behind, but what can you do in this moment today to reclaim your voice and to finally start sharing your story, to finally keep moving forward with your influence? Because all of this isn't just about how to be able to stand and how to be able to move forward, how to be able to grow in just your influence, because that's an outward thing. But what I believe Nikki was saying for us today is that it starts in the inside. It starts with a choice, and that choice starts with you, and it starts with you today. So for today, school is dismissed, but your influence, it never takes a day off. So stay bold, stay focused, and go and leave your legacy. For today, we'll see you later. Bye.